Need that one, I think. All right, everyone. Okay. Picture's gone again. Must have touched something. No, yeah, that's perfect. Okay. All right, everybody. So we're going to continue our discussion from yesterday about karma and how it works and how we purify it. So we're going to listen as you, our motivation, we're going to listen. We listen freshly. And maybe you've heard this 10,000 times. I've been saying it this long, but somehow you hear it every time you say it and hear it. Think freshly. Then it really becomes dynamic, not just some, oh yeah, I know that. Tell me something different, you know. Then you don't listen. We have to hear it every time fresh. And every time we hear it, it goes a bit deeper, a bit clearer, a bit clearer. So we're going to listen to this to take some tools from these teachings. You know, even as 1%, fantastic. Put that into practice. To do what? Two things to develop. Start to develop the two wings of the bird, a Buddha, which means work on your own mind, develop your own qualities, abide by the laws of karma, work on your mind, rid your mind of all the rubbish and therefore your own suffering. And then you can benefit others on the basis of that. These are the tools. That's what they're for. I'll sing our little prayer that expresses that. Sangye charan soke chognam la janchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyan gipersonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog sangye charan soke chognam la janchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyan gipersonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog sangye charan soke chognam la janchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyan gipersonam ki Drola penche sangye drupa shog. So as we know, if we've been hearing these teachings a little bit or a long time, the teachings are all presented in an orderly way, orderly according to the level of capacity to internalize them, just like math, music, and everything else. So the very first level of practice, entry-level junior school grade 1, which is the starting point, but it continues all the way to Buddhahood, is to understand the law that runs the universe. I mean, this is the way, they don't say it like that in the Buddhist teachings, because in Tibet, for example, you know, and then in India before that, this view of karma was the natural view. I mean, like in the same way in our culture, you either are religious and you believe in a creator, or you're a materialist, you know, and you have that view. But in the Asia, India, coming from India, and then on to Tibet and China, when Buddhism developed there, karma was just the default mode. It's in the bones of the being of the people. They don't have to sort of be explained. So the main emphasis in the teachings is on how to apply it immediately in terms of how to prevent suffering. But the broader picture, like I was discussing last night, continually, for me, it's important to get the biggest picture possible. The principle, the fundamental principle, and repeating continuously that it's a natural law. That's a very powerful concept in our culture, because we know if you've been religious, you talk about God's law. And then all the materialists come along, no, we don't want that. We want natural law. And that's what we mean by science. That's literally what we mean by science, isn't it? Natural law. Well, Buddha's not, there's no view of creator. There's no view there of punishment or reward. There's none of that view. It doesn't exist. So there's only natural law. It's kind of a curious one to think about, you know. So that means the Buddha, like that question from last night, Tessa, who was it? She's not here now. Tessa, was it Tessa? Yeah. You know, sort of assuming, where does this come from? Where's the information come from? It's a really good question. We should ask it. Now, if you're religious, you know perfectly well it comes from revelation. You know, whether it was that Mormon fellow, he got visions, and whether it's, you know, the Jews, whether it's the Christians, God is the boss. God lives, you know, God is this unmanifest, all-knowing, all-powerful energy that is seen to be the creator of the universe, the creator of me, the creator of the Lord. So that's why it's God's law. This we don't analyze, but that's the thing. Well, Buddha has no such concept. Of course, on a relative level, there are Buddha's rules. Like we know when the monks, initially the monks, and eventually they let women in too in India, started living together. You know, it's like anybody. If you more than two people live together, you start having rules. You know, we don't do this and we don't do that. We pay equally for the sugar, and you have rules. So you develop rules to live together. Like cities do that, countries do that. They're kind of like they're not like natural laws. They're like ways to live together. You have red lights, don't go fast, don't kill each other. Well, that's kind of natural law. But so there's those type of Buddhist things. That's all the vows. You know, that like sort of vows of monks and nuns. They're sort of to do with behavior. But the fundamentals. The fundamentals of good ethics for the Buddha are based on natural law. If you do your observation, if you observe sentient beings, you're going to notice the ant, the dog, the monkey, they don't like being kicked. They don't like their food being stolen. They don't like being shouted at. Check it out. Check your own experience. Check the experiences of others. That's natural law. Natural law is what happens naturally. No one makes it. And therefore, no one polices it. It can't be like that. It takes a while to hear this, actually. So we don't see it that way. When we hear don't do this and don't do that, we visualize grandma or grandpa or the police or mummy telling us, don't you do that. If you do that, you'll get punished. We hear it like that. We hear it like that. But the Buddha's not saying it like that. Because there's no punisher, there's no rewarder, there's no creator. He's telling us what he has found from his own experience. He's observed the universe, observed sentient beings, and he's come up with this, you know, and he's observed, and this is the one that's quite subtle, which we cannot observe with the brain. We can't observe at the grosser level. So we've got to eventually get more advanced in our spiritual practice. The natural law that runs the universe, or the natural law within which the universe runs, meaning sentient beings. Sentient beings are the occupants of the universes. You know, specifically their minds. Minds are beginningless and endless, Buddha has observed. And whatever the mind does every millisecond, and then followed up by the body and the speech, whatever kind of embodiment you are, that is the process of quote unquote creating karma. Every millisecond of what you think and do and say programs your mind. Buddha would have liked that concept. We get it, you know. Every time you practice piano, guess what? You're programming your mind. And what do you turn into? A really good musician. You know your mind does it. You know, it's not some mystical thing. What you think and do and say in relation to music is what produces the musician. Well, the Buddha's saying that for happiness and suffering. Insofar as whatever you think and do and say will produce your future, produces the person you become. You sow seeds in your mind that will ripen as fruits. That's the first broadest level of this law. The next level of detail is that every millisecond of what you think and do and say that's labeled negative, we started doing the discussion yesterday, or indeed everything that ripens necessarily as suffering. It's what the mind does it, and then the body and the speech, which are the servants of the mind, carry out the anger, the jealousy, the resentment, the attachment, and do the job of stealing, killing, lying, etc., etc., etc. If you break it down like that. So necessarily, whatever's driven by a negative state of mind, a neurotic state of mind, is will cause us to do what's called a negative action. But it's not like, you know, negative action means you're found out and you're naughty and you get punished. And if you don't get found out, you didn't do it. This is very bizarre. That's like thinking that your doctor says don't smoke, but when you go home and there's no doctor there, that it's okay to smoke because you won't get cancer because she doesn't see. That's how we think. Oh, I got away with it. No one found me. I didn't get caught. That view is a ridiculous view, because it implies punishment. So if mummy doesn't see you do it, you get away with it. You don't get away with anything because it's a natural law that programs your mind. Whatever you think and do and say programs your mind into the person you become. That's the idea. And it refers equally to happiness and suffering. And it's almost too simple in a way to think about happiness and suffering. A big deal, how boring, how corny, you know. But analyze the world, analyze yourself. There's either happiness or suffering. There's either the pleasant feelings or the unpleasant feelings. I mean, roughly speaking, isn't it? The Buddha says the drive to be happy and the wish not to suffer is what drives every living being without exception. But the trouble is, he says, we're up a creek without a paddle when it comes to the causes of happiness and the causes of suffering. That's his thing. We think the causes of suffering are the weather, the bad food, the ex-husband, or even the present husband, you know. We think that automatic. Dogs and monkeys think it too. The dog will look at you really upset if you shout at it. It assumes that your shouting is the cause of its suffering. I assume my husband is the cause of my suffering when he's mean to me. This is automatic and natural and primordially deep as a view. And the Buddha says it's partly true, but you haven't got the whole picture. This is the part that's difficult because it's not the view we have. So the Buddha's view fundamentally is that every millisecond of what a person thinks and does and says leaves seeds in the mind. And then every moment we have an experience, either in the mind itself, a tendency, a thought, or as an experience at the hands of others, or even the way the physical world impacts upon us. Forget it, a rebirth, forget that one. Every moment of those is the fruit of an action you did. So the first cause of everything is always your past action. The first cause of everything is always your past action. The first cause of everything is always your past action. Then the physical conditions, the external conditions are the secondary cause, the catalyst, which is a shock to us because we don't even posit a past life, you know, so it's a weird idea. This is the fundamental view that Buddha has found, is what he's saying, and he's found this to be true by observing it. He didn't make it up. So, of course, it's hard to prove it initially. It's extremely hard. So you take it as your working hypothesis first. And then as you progress and practice spiritually and get better and better and more advanced, and eventually get single point of concentration, you'll be able to see that it's true. That's when you prove it to be true, one step at a time. So the very first level of practice is Buddha's little kind of list of 10 don'ts. And it's his recommendations. He's not a boss. It's his recommendation. He's not like Jesus who says, if you do that, you're going against God's will, so God will punish you. Not like that. It's not Buddha's job to punish you. It's not your doctor's job to punish you. Their job is to point something out to you based on their own experience. They're your mentor. They're your guide. They're your advisor. Buddha's an advisor. So he says on the basis of what he's seen to be true, which is that doing negative actions, which is say at the heaviest level will be harming others, that forget about the harm it does to others. The thing he wants to get us to see at the beginning is that's going to program you into a miserable, unhappy, angry, jealous, resentful, killing person. Who wants that? Not to mention receiving that at the hands of others, because we're very social creatures. So we have to, the fundamental point of karma in the beginning is you have to be driven by the wish not to suffer. That's why you go to the doctor. That's why you stop smoking. The only reason is because you don't want future suffering. The only reason you stop eating sugar is because you don't want diabetes. The only reason to start at the beginning practice to stop killing, stealing, and lying is because you don't want the suffering that will come from that, which is 1, a suffering rebirth, 2, a tendency to keep doing it, 3, an experience of it happening to you, and 4, an environmental result. These are the 4 ways, like 4 tracks of karma. 4 ways in which your past actions will ripen in the present. So we know we don't like being lied to. Solution, to stop being lied to in the future, stop lying now. You know you don't like you wouldn't like to be killed. Solution, to stop it from the future, stop killing. You know you don't like to get sick, which is an environmental result of killing. You don't want that in the future. Solution, stop killing. You don't want people to not believe your words. Solution, stop lying. It's almost like too simple. We don't get it, you know, because we're not used to thinking this is the cause of suffering. When someone is bad, when someone doesn't believe our words, we're really upset because we know we spoke the truth. How can this possibly be? It's because we lied in the past. That's called experiences similar to the cause. And of course, as I keep pointing out, we never ask why do good things happen. We don't care why good things happen. Just give me more, please. It's our human right. Buddha says all these are misconceptions. If you haven't sown the seed, if you haven't created the cause, you won't get happiness. If you have created the cause, you will get happiness. If you haven't created the cause, you won't get suffering. And if you have, you will get suffering. It's like if you put a seed in the ground, you'll get a rose. If there's a rose there, you must have sowed the seed. This is the logic. But this view takes a while for us to hear. It's not what we think in our culture. It's not what generally speaking, it's not the view of the creative religious philosophers. This is Buddha's approach, and the Indians before him. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, it's like self-creation. Interesting way to put it. So the starting point in practice is all for one's own benefit. You're the main beneficiary of not killing, not stealing, not lying. Of course, as Lama Zopa says, the rats and roaches will be happy. They'll have a party because you leave them in peace. But the main motivation at the beginning is because you don't want future suffering. And don't think that's bad. It's good. You won't stop killing and lying and stealing until you get that, because the habits are so strong. The tendencies to follow attachment, follow anger, follow low self-esteem, follow depression are very strong. So we've got to be motivated first for our own sake. It's like self-respect, it's like self-compassion. Then, of course, as you get more advanced, you'll be motivated by compassion as well. So like we talked, to summarize last night, if a negative action is what causes me future suffering, I better learn to know what defines a negative action, haven't I? I better learn to know what are the components so I can avoid doing it. It's practical. So there's different ways karma ripens. One is the fully ripened result, which is a type of rebirth. The other one is these residual results, which are the tendency to keep doing it in a lifetime, the experience of having happening to you, and the environmental results. These are the three kind of residual results of those actions. So for an action that we do, let's say a positive action, for it to be labeled a complete action, they have to be, which is one that'll provide you with a rebirth. One, in our case, we've got a human body. This means at the time of our past death, not more than a few weeks before we found our way to our mummy's fallopian tube, where it joined the egg and sperm, we were going through that death process, before you even stop breathing, certain conditions arose that would trigger out of your bank vault of billions of karmic seeds, in our case, a very specific, very delicious, rich, strong, non-killing karmic seed, having practiced, as Lama Zopa says, in the framework of a spiritual path in the past, within the framework of living in vows of not killing, as we discussed. One of those seeds was triggered, even before you stop breathing. Already you're programmed to go to your mummy's fallopian tube. Maybe she hasn't even met your daddy yet. A few weeks before you get there, you know, it's already programmed. I mean, this is where it's completely different how we think. We think mummy and daddy made us, you know. We think God put the soul there. Neither of those. They give us a body, sure. Mum and dad give us a body, no argument. They do not give me my mind, my tendencies, my love, my hate, my jealousy, my compassion, my kindness, my intelligence, my being good at football or music, whatever. All those are tendencies that I brought with me into this life. Programmed with these from the first second of conception. In fact, at the time of the past death, these were already being triggered, all organized for the person you'll become when you get into the fallopian tube of your mum. We create it. It's such a different view, isn't it? We create it. You get the human body, we got the human body, like a miracle. We cause that from past non-killing. And we have very strong, intense karma with that mummy and daddy. You don't just go to any random womb, you know. You've got strong, particular, specific history with that particular mother, that particular father. Very specific. You go like a magnet. So you leave the body eventually. Now, at the time before you stop breathing, the main seed is triggered, which is the fruit of non-killing, which programmed to go to that particular mother. And then the other three, all the seeds for those are already sort of organizing themselves. The seeds that will produce your tendencies, your personality traits, the seeds that will produce your experiences at the hands of others, and the seeds that will produce your experiences in the environment itself, the way the environment impacts upon you. All of these we created from our past. We're already programmed with these even before we leave the past body, well before you get to your mother's fallopian tube. It's not just accidental, but you're born in a beautiful, so if you're born in a beautiful place, a beautiful environment, you know, with sweet rainbows and delicious fruit and good trees and peaceful and friendly neighbors, that's the fruit of all the virtues, all the non-killing, non-stealing, non-lying, non-angry, non-this, non-that, that ripens as all the elements of the world benefiting you, environmental karma. If you wake up in a life where you're surrounded by smells and stinky and ugly and broken or violent or like a war zone, no accident. That's fruit of your own past actions. But the elements are such that they're now disharmonious. The people around you are disharmonious due to your past negative actions. We are all the creators of our own reality. This is so fundamentally different that it takes us a while to process it, because the view we have is, you know, that the external world is the main cause of why I'm suffering. There's terrible people out there. There's horrible wars. There's ugly neighbors. Look at me, poor me. I didn't ask to get born. How come I'm born in this place? Look at these evil parents. Look what they're doing to me. This is a view we have. It's deeply ingrained in our being. It's our neuroscientific view. It's a psychological view. It's ego's view. So it's hard to get past this one. And then that trouble is we hear it as blame and punishment. Oh, you mean I was a bad person? It's terrifying to us. That's why it's so shocking for us when we hear that an innocent little pussycat or an innocent little child has a bad experience. It's just not possible for our minds. It's too shocking. We can't even bear to think about it because we assume it's punishment. We assume it's a terrible, evil thing to be done to a little innocent being. It's very hard for us to get past this. Then we go to the other extreme was, oh, well, they deserve it. Let them suffer. Both of these are really ridiculous views. What it should bring is incredible compassion. Out of our own ignorance, we have created the cause for suffering. Out of our ignorance, we have created the cause for our own suffering. And we've created the cause for our own happiness. So we got the karmic seed that cause us to get a human body, our specific mother, and then the other karmic seeds that will produce our personality, our experiences at the hands of others, and the environment. We're all there, all organized, even before you left your mummy's womb. It's all programmed. When you leave your mother's womb eventually, and you kind of wake up in this kind of intermediate state, they call it, a bit like a dream state, and you're kind of twiddling your thumbs, waiting for your mum and dad to hop into bed, or wherever they hop. And then when they do, and the egg and sperm meet, you run like a magnet, and off you go, new person, starts a new person. We've been doing this for countless eons, Buddha says, as hilarious as it sounds. We're doing this for countless eons. We're at every imaginable life, every imaginable happiness, every imaginable suffering. What he's suggesting is that we haven't cut the root of all this by realizing emptiness, by the fundamental final one we have to do. So we keep on being reborn endlessly because of this. So he's giving us methods to get the hell out of this mess. Giving up suffering and its causes. So the very first level is at least stop creating future suffering. At least that one. Nothing fancy. At least stop creating future suffering, the gross level. There's more suffering levels to that. At least to stop the gross level. That's junior school entry level, grade 1, to abide by the laws of karma. He's giving us a list of 10 little things to refrain from doing, which would then produce a good human birth, good tendencies, good experiences, and good environmental results. If you want a decent life, again, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't this, don't that. And karma takes care, as Lama Yeshe says. You create the cause to get exactly the results of that, which is a happy life with a beautiful environment and plenty of money in the bank and loving parents and kind friends, people who believe you, people who don't lie to you, people who don't harm you. There's not just accidental random events. So if you want happiness, we have to cause it. If you don't want suffering, we have to stop causing it. It's up to us. That's the implication. This is the basis of one's practice as a Buddhist, the fundamentals. So one way of looking at this in terms of this happiness, suffering kind of concept, if you look at one day, what we tend, what do you do today, Robina? We track it externally. Well, I got up at this time, I had my breakfast, I did that, I went out, the sun was shining, it was raining, the person bumped into me in the car, the red light was red. We always describe the external events. But if we described it internally, you could do a little kind of track. You can, track your day. You could do it internally by going, oh, I woke up with fairly happy feelings, and then there's some really unhappy feelings, and very, very unhappy, and middle happy, and quite happy, and very, very unhappy for the rest of the day. So that means you could track it externally. Was when the happy feelings were, it's because you got the nice breakfast, and the unhappy feelings were because you met the red light, and the really unhappy feelings because the husband shouted at you and punched you in the nose. So you can track your internal and the external. Well, the main one's track the internal. So you can divide your day into happy moments and unhappy moments. That's it. There's a third category called neutral. Well, who cares about them? So you've got very, very unhappy, medium unhappy, very, very happy, extremely unhappy, extremely happy, happiness and suffering, pleasant and unpleasant. It's almost too simple. It almost seems like a simple analysis. This is how he's describing. So the most first basic level of karma, don't worry about getting out of samsara. Don't worry about realizing emptiness. Don't worry about bodhicitta yet. That's all advanced. I don't want future suffering. Duh, So what am I going to do? Don't kill, don't steal, don't jump on the wrong partner. 3 of the body. 4 of the speech. Don't lie. Don't badmouth people. Don't abuse them to their face. Don't badmouth behind their backs, and don't rabbit on about nothing. And the last three are kind of, I call it this, kind of the beginnings of working on the heavy level of these three main delusions. At least give up the deepest level of craving, like the junkie mind, you know, the deepest level of attachment, always craving for something, never satisfied. Try to give that up, try to subdue that. Give up the heavy levels of anger, which is like really getting angry easily and wanting people to suffer, or being glad when they suffer, which is so heavy. You look at the world, that's a heavy duty. And give up the heaviest levels of this ignorance, which is like the really heavy duty, fundamentalist, right, wrong, good, bad, very black and white kind of mind, very ignorant kind of mind, you know. At least work on this levels of the three. And that's a little list of 10 things Buddha would recommend as good medicine. And the conclusion from this, the result of this, is you cut your future non-suffering, therefore your future happiness at the most basic level. It's not complicated. It's simple advice. We make it complicated because we don't think like this. That's the very first level. Give up the grossest level of suffering. You're guaranteed to get another human body. You're guaranteed to have nice tendencies. You're guaranteed to not have bad things happen to you. And you can guarantee that the environment won't harm you. The 4 ways that karma ripens. First level practice, junior school. Now, as I said last night, to add to that fundamental level of practice, you then maybe decide, I'm going to take refuge, formalize my commitment to being a Buddhist, and then you take the 5 laypersons vows, which is a really extra potent way of stopping creating future suffering. Taken from those 10, extracted like 4 of them, and then adding 1 to it of no intoxicants. You vow not to kill. You vow not to, we'll go into these in more detail for tomorrow for those who want to take refuge or renew their refuge. You vow not to steal. You vow, or take the ungiven, as the Tibetans would say it. You vow not to say words that aren't true. You vow not to cheat on a partner or steal someone else's. At least that. And you vow not to take intoxicants. You don't have to take these 5 all, but these are the 5 that are presented. And then when you take refuge, you then take these 5 vows. And like I mentioned yesterday, the power, psychologically, the power of vows is incredible. Because every second of the day you're keeping them. It's like so powerful in the mind stream. It's every second of the day, even when you're not thinking about it, you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds and you're purifying these tendencies in a very powerful way. Whereas if you don't have a vow not to kill, like I said, Lama Zopa says just being good is not enough. We're sitting here right now not killing. But if our mind isn't involved in it by intentionally deciding, I will not kill, then there's no karma created, because karma starts with the mind. Intention is the main meaning of the word karma. Mental action, the thought. So when you think, I will not kill that ant, that you then sow a seed of not killing, and it drops into your bank vault. But it's not very powerful seed because your motivation is not very powerful. Whereas if you live in the vow of not killing 24 hours a day, you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds of not killing because of the power of vows. One has to think of this because it doesn't seem evident to us. We're talking psychologically, not some mystical idea. So vows is a powerful way to basically to turn you into a non-harming, content, fulfilled person. This very first level of vows. Don't this, don't that, don't. It's like these govern your behavior. Program your mind in virtue, in non-harming. That's exactly what we want to become, a nice, happy, non-harming person. We program, we train our minds. Then you go to the next level of vows when you get into the Bodhisattva path, and you have the Bodhisattva vows. They're much more potent, and they are more to do with how to benefit others. This first lot are how to refrain from negative actions in order to protect yourself from suffering. This next lot are still don't this and don't that, but they're to help you know what's best for others. It's more advanced, more space, more big, more advanced level of vows. So like I said, it's a natural law. I have to say it repeatedly because we're so used to God's law. We assume it's another version of God's law. It's Buddha's law. Not like that. The doctor doesn't make up cancer. They identified it, and then they identified the causes. A botanist doesn't make up the laws of botany. They've always been there. This is an important point. It's what natural law means. Botany has always been there. As long as there's been a universe and air and water and soil and gravity and things, or whatever's involved, things have grown. Just clever humans have come along and identified the laws. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what science is. Well, that's Buddha. He didn't make up the laws of karma. He identified them and articulated them. That's all botany is. No one made it up. But clever people have identified how it works. That's what we mean by science. That's what natural law means. Karma is the same. Exactly the same. It's shocking to us to think this. The mind is beginningless and endless. The law that runs those minds is the law of karma. It's very surprising to us. But it's some level of it, not surprising. Like we said last night, forget other realms, forget past life, future life, forget that. We really understand the law of karma, but we just don't call it that in day-to-day life. You know perfectly well if you decide to be a musician, what do you think you're doing? You are learning, you're filling your mind with unbelievable complicated theories about music, aren't you? Let's say it's classical music. It's your mind. It starts with your mind. Your fingers can't automatically go and play Bach. You've got to program your mind with thoughts first. That's called theories. You learn the theories. You fill your mind with a bunch of theories. You program your mind with these concepts about what music is. And the more you learn those theories, the more you program your mind with those theories, and then you start to play the piano. It's not rocket science. You produce the musician by starting with your mind. Well, that's exactly what Buddha's saying about becoming a happy person. You have to do it. And everything you think without exception and then do and say is the process that exactly produces the person you become. But we're so used to thinking you produce the carpenter, you produce the musician, you produce the mathematician, but we think a whole other bunch of rules produce a happy person or a suffering person. And it's all out there. Nothing to do with me. It's very weird, actually. We understand we produce a musician. We understand that you have to program your mind to turn into a musician, but we don't understand your mind that we have to program our mind to turn into a happy person. No, that's to do with cakes and boyfriends. They're the ones that make me happy. We don't think our mind plays any role at all. It's really quite true. It's a very shocking concept, very bizarre, actually. We don't think our mind plays any role at all. As Thomas Open says, we don't think our mind plays any role at all in our happiness and suffering. We really analyze it, and that's what we think. It's a very, very shocking idea. Quite mentally ill to actually think your mind doesn't play a role, that it's the cake, the boyfriend, the weather, the house. That's how we think. Totally. It's the view of attachment. It's insane. It's quite demented. It's like thinking the music teacher and Bach writing his music and Mr. Steinway making a piano, that they are the cause of you being a good musician. Nothing to do with my mind. No. That's insane. Everything to do with your mind. Your mind is the main one. Training your mind in the musical theories. Well, here we're training our mind we're deciding to train our mind in the theories that Buddha is telling us that he has found to be true about the universe. So we're taking it as our hypothesis. So we're training our minds to stop killing, stealing, lying. Training our minds to try to give up attachment and anger and jealousy. Training our minds in that. Buddha says that's the process. That's the causes of your happiness. That's not rocket science. You can see in a day, if you spend every day being angry, resentful, jealous, and depressed and anxious, what do you think you're becoming? But we're so disconnected from ourselves, we think it's everybody else causing us to be that. We know we're depressed, we know we're angry, we know we're anxious, but I'm allowed to be jealous. Look what my boyfriend does. I'm allowed to be angry. Look what my mother did. I'm allowed to be depressed. Look at the way the world. We're really quite demented. We're quite disconnected from ourselves. We do not think our mind plays any role. We think it's everything else. That's quite serious. When we analyze it, it's absurd. Everything your mind does every second of the day is producing the person you become. There's no question. It doesn't mean that the external world can't help. That depression is your mind. Yes, pills can help. That anger is your mind. Yes, your boyfriend did hit you. No argument. That happiness is your mind. That attachment is your mind. Jealousy, anger. And that's why the Buddhist psychological model, you don't look at what happened to you to discover your mind. You look at the mind itself. It's very direct. You identify what's going on in your mind itself. And the Buddha is telling us at the moment, we suffer because we're driven by attachment. We've got this body made of the 5 senses, and attachment's job is to get the objects of these 5 senses to fill, to satisfy itself. And we do it through the 5 holes: food in this one, music in that one, other ones in other ones. Attachment's job is to find the objects that we are convinced such that when we get them, it'll bring satisfaction. So we're driven by attachment. Eating in its nature is attachment. Sleeping in its nature is attachment. This is shocking to us. It sounds brutal. We just go, oh, it's natural. Yeah, it's natural, but it's attachment, driven by attachment. The greatest yogis, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for example, he never sleeps. It sounds like mental illness to us, just some bizarre, because he's given up attachment. He's given up delusions. He's full of compassion and virtue. Practice, of course, trained himself, programmed. Because they've got the power to completely transform their minds. And so, another one, the biography I worked on years ago, one of our lamas, Geshe Lama Kontrol, who lived in the mountains, up in the mountains, in a hole in the wall, 6 foot of snow in the winter, spent years in these caves meditating. Okay, that's too abstract for us. What he's doing is programming his mind in virtue. He got to the point where he didn't need sleep, food, anything. He was able to, get nourishment just from the air. It was enough for him because he was so advanced. Didn't need clothing, didn't need warmth. He was able to retain the heat in his own body. This is just too weird for us. We can't get this here. No such methods. Sounds like bizarre. So attachment's the main thing. Effectively, the 4 Noble Truths, Buddha's telling us the main cause of suffering is attachment. But the starting point of practice isn't to give up attachment yet. It's too advanced. Is to control the servants of attachment, the body and the speech. We all know this. We understand certain levels of intense attachment, like being an alcoholic, like being a junkie, people who want to jump on girls 20 times a day, people who do video games 5 hours, 6 hours a day. That's attachment. This drive, never satisfied, always wanting more. We understand it. And it happens to be things like alcohol and heroin have particularly intense physical results, don't they? But look at the suffering of the mind. The mind is the problem. So we all know it's sensible when you're so much driven by so much attachment to give up the object. Very intelligent. Lots of people do that. Well, Buddha's is saying we have to start looking at that approach. You can't give up food totally. If you're a highly advanced yogi, you can. But we start to harness the energy. We start to control, observe how we're driven with attachment, driven by this hunger, this emotional hunger, never feeling I have enough. It's hard to distinguish. Because food is so utterly necessary for ordinary people like us. But it's very hard to distinguish it, the need for food from the attachment to food. It's almost impossible for us initially. But it's really good practice to observe. And because it's so automatic, we don't see it as a problem. We have to start observing. Just as what drives us to do most of what we do. Initially, it sounds shocking and rather depressing. What we take for granted as normal is what Buddha is suggesting is suffering. So we have to look at this carefully. So I want to set the time. Any questions?
Why is it depressing?
Some here.
Huh? Why is it depressing?
Why what?
Why is it depressing?
to hear about how what we think is normal is in fact mental illness. That's quite depressing, I would suggest. To think that what we've been normally doing all our lives, eating, sleeping, going to the toilet, jumping on boys and girls, thinking the world causes us happiness, thinking attachment's normal, to discover that actually it's mental illness, that's quite a shock to us, isn't it? Are you hearing me or not?
Yeah.
What's your problem?
I don't know.
You're not depressing.
I'm not depressed.
Well, then maybe you haven't recognized it yet then. Maybe you haven't recognized the depth of the problem. But I mean, that's wonderful. You're not depressed if you're excited by it. So you've given up attachment to sex, drugs, rock and roll, video games, sleep. No, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so slowly, isn't it? Okay. Yes.
How does the body not shut down?
What, darling?
How does the body not shut down from no food or no
Okay, this is the only way to understand this. Is again the Vajrayana way of the more advanced teachings description of how we're constructed. We've got gross body, which is this one, and we have gross consciousness, which is the sensory consciousness. But then we've got this subtler level of physical energy. Now, this is the same way roughly the Chinese doctors talk, the Tibetan medical system. We've got these 72,000 subtle channels, subtle nervous system. This is not neuroscientific view, I promise. Do you understand? And then through those channels are coursing all our different states of mind, inextricably connected to all these different wind energies, prana they call it. This is the ancient Indian system, the Chinese system. It's been around for thousands of years. So the balance of those wind energies is the basis of good health, and also of our mental stability, because the mind and the body are at this level are intimately connected. So when you've learned more and more to identify attachment and given it up, and then start to realize emptiness, get body cheated, all these other things as well, then you get to the point where you, as a meditator, like Geshe-la Kontrab living in the mountains, he had complete single point of concentration. He was able to go to the subtlest level of his mind and stay like that for months meditating. So he was able to, in a sense, that because his mind was so sensitive, his physical energies were also so sensitive. And because the physical world is made of the four elements, because he was more advanced, he was able to be nourished by the air. He got all he needed from air energy. We've got to have carrots and bull bottoms and potatoes and gross things. Do you understand? Because our attachment's very gross. Do you understand what I'm saying? So as you get better and better, you get more subtle. You don't need to ingest all the heavy duty things. You're able to just get nourishment from the air. It's enough. He was able to live on the air, basically. Do you get my point?
It's hard to comprehend. Yeah.
Well, of course it is. Yeah. It's not how we think. Yeah. Of course it is. It's a whole nother discussion. Yeah. Any questions? I mean, of course, one step at a time, Can't leap to that overnight. You would starve to death because our attachment is so strong and we're not familiar with it. Of course, couldn't do it most of it. Any other questions about what I've talked so far and what we talked last night? Yes.
I just
Marianne.
Comment.
What, darling?
I knew a Chinese acupuncturist,
Can we have the mic so people on Zoom can hear?
Okay.
Can you take the mic first? Wait, sweetheart, so people on Zoom can hear you. Thank you. Go on, talk into the mic.
Just a comment.
Darling, people need to hear you. If you're going to speak, we might as well hear you.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're talking to yourself. There's no benefit.
Of course. Okay. I knew a Chinese
Can you hear her?
acupuncturist that ate 2 apples a day, and she was very sad.
There you go. That's right. She obviously developed her mind, and also just karmically, some people don't have much need for food. We can see that. Some people don't. Yeah. So, yes. Hello.
Hello. So my question would have to do with if you're observing somebody that has deep depression.
Yes.
So example, my
Yes.
son.
Yes, exactly.
And mom, of course, wants to save, and you can never save anybody.
Yes.
So therefore, what would you say about that?
I understand.
What you've already said.
So in other words, this is the compassion wing. This is how to help people. These teachings here are like for us learning about our minds and how we can help ourselves. And of course, it's on the basis of that you then see others go, oh my God, we're all in the same boat. What can I do to help? So depression. Let me just talk about depression. Shall I try and give an analysis of it, taking this model of the mind? This is not the way we think in our culture. But if we understand this way it works, it's kind of reasonable. We understand this primordial attachment that we're describing at a very subtle level. What it is millisecond by millisecond. It's this constant kind of emotional hunger, so automatic, so instinctive, only for the nice things. Attachment only wants nice things. You understand what I'm saying? Can you hear? It's a really deep level of it. It's not even articulate. It's just an assumption. We know that perfectly well. You wake up in the morning and the weather's pleasant. You feel good, right? Your body feels good because attachment's getting what it wants. But if you wake up in the morning and you stub your toe, the second you stub your toe, attachment just got what it didn't want, which is pain. So then what arises that millisecond is aversion, annoyance, upset, frustrated, or anger. They're all variations. So anger and all the variations of it are the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. So these are at a primordial level. Every second of the day, attachment is like an assumption that I'd better get all the nice things. So we adjust ourselves every day. We adjust the temperature, adjust the food, adjust the drinks to keep always getting to keep attachment kind of buoyant. Are you with me? So when attachment doesn't get what it wants, so the weather's bad, the hubby shouts, the toe gets stubbed, the red light comes, and some people have really intense moments of all the time meeting ugly things, right? Now, the response will always be aversion. Aversion is the most basic level of what's called anger. So anger is the most volatile level of aversion. Then there's annoyance, irritation, frustration, upset. We all have those. We never think of them as a problem. They're mini moments of anger. Do you understand what I'm saying? But and they build up, and guess what they become? That's what depression is. It's a build up of constant thwarted moments of attachment, not getting what it wants, not being satisfied. So we become completely hopeless, and it builds up. And the trouble is, in our culture, we only catch it when it's serious. We don't notice it when it's building. So there's nothing that ever happens in our mind that just doesn't go in one ear and out the other. Everything programs us. So we're never paying attention to all these moments of attachment, moments of aversion, until I want to kill somebody or until I want to kill myself. This is a major problem. We don't notice these things until it's too late. So this process, are you with me? So this constant hunger to have things nice, naturally, you're not going to get things nice all the time. Nobody in the universe gets that. And then even when and this is the point of the trouble with attachment, even when we do get the nice thing, we're not satisfied. Dissatisfaction is like the disease of attachment, and that eventually becomes this deep depression. I mean, a person like me was always volatile. When I was a kid, I didn't get depressed. I got angry. Irritation, upset, frustration are milder levels of anger. We don't even think they're a problem. When things happen throughout the day and things get wrong, we say, I'll get annoyed, I'll get frustrated. It doesn't go astray. It builds up in the mind until the straw that breaks the camel's back. And if it's going to be a very angry person, they'll kill the husband. Or if internalized aversion, it's depression. So, and because depression is more hard to see, we don't catch it until you're inert in bed and don't know what to do. And it's also because we don't pay attention to what is going on in the mind, moment by moment, and catch it and work with it. You with me? This analysis is really quite subtle and hard to see. So depression is like hopelessness. There's nothing to look forward to. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. You feel you're worthless. You feel the life is worthless. We see it like that and we believe it. This is the problem, isn't it? So all you can do as a person who can see it in someone else, you can't fix, but you can just show love, support, optimism, not trying to be like Pollyanna every minute, but just you have to be like this kind of, rock of Gibraltar for the person. There's nothing more you can do, Do you understand? And not be dragged down by it yourself, because then you all drown together. Do you understand? Just give enthusiasm. The trouble is with mums, we jump into it, we convinced we have to fix it, and all we think it's our fault. I always remember my mother, like a typical mum, she had 7 kids, there were always dramas in the family, joined the universe, and she'd get terrible guilt. She'd get very depressed from guilt because bad things happened. And I remember one point I couldn't even articulate it then. I was so enraged at all this guilt because it's like she thought she was responsible for all my suffering. And that's kind of insulting me. Hey, Mum, I played some role in my own life. You get my point here. Mums do that. You over-exaggerate your role in the suffering and happiness. But if you can be more distant, more objective, and then be like a rock of Gibraltar and give love and support, it's much more spacious, Do you understand? Yeah. Not easy, I can't imagine. I mean, one of my sisters has got 7 children as well, about 27 grandchildren. She joked about how when one of her daughters left home, she was so obsessed about her daughter having problems, getting car crashes, having strangers. She'd even sneak by at night and check the windows of her new apartment, She was embarrassed. I mean, she would joke about it. This is mums, isn't it? There's love there, there's compassion there, but this attachment kind of makes a mess of it. There's an over-exaggerated sense of responsibility. And that's where we've got to realize, like karma, this child, this person came to your womb, you've got some history with each other. You didn't make them, you provide them a life. That's pretty amazing. And so it's giving this respect. Or often what happens is when the child is hopeless, we try to give all the answers. But sometimes, sweetheart, I trust your wisdom. I'm sure you'll work it out. That kind of answer is a shocking thing for a child, but what we need to do. So they're always trying to find the solution, always thinking, we do that without everybody. We try to think it's our job to make it all go. We're endlessly giving advice. No, I'm sure you'll make a good decision. You've got wisdom. I trust your wisdom. Do you understand? But they know you're there, kind of holding them emotionally, but trusting them. And also the other one is very powerful, I think. When you see someone who's sick or depressed, all we see is that. But talk to the better part of your son. That'll help him see it. If you only talk to the depressed part, the angry part, the alcoholic part, that's all it just reinforces him. Do you understand my point? I can see that in my life. I mean, I'm not blaming anybody else. Because I was very volatile and angry, that's what everybody else saw. So I kept feeding back to me my anger. So I must be an angry person, total. And I remember a friend of mine, eventually I met this friend who didn't always just speak to that part of me. It was very empowering. Do you understand what I'm saying?
What does that mean, not speak to that part?
Okay, if all you do is see your depressed son, you think of him as depressed, you see him as depressed, you paint a picture of him depressed, there's more going on in there. Speak to the other parts of him. Instead of always looking with sad eyes, oh, darling, how are you? I mean, you see, he's got other qualities. I use the example of an alcoholic brother, let's say. He's not just an alcoholic, he's also kind and loving and generous and compassionate. They're not gone either, you just can't see them. So for me, because anger was one of my qualities, it was true, but that dominated for other people. So all they did was talk about and see and respond to angry Robina. Whereas this friend that I met, became a good friend, she wasn't disturbed by that. And she fed other parts of me that helped me see those other parts of myself. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's powerful. You understand? Yes.
So,
Yes.
could
We
it be
have
that
a
you
question.
can-
Oh,
Yeah, hang on a second, darling. Be good if you, would you mind just so I can hear you better? Thank you so much.
Could it be that in that case, for example, if I feel on someone that they have this depression or
Yes.
these bad feelings,
Yes,
and that bothers me, could that be that this is an attachment that I don't want?
of
to
course.
see
That's
that
the
on
whole
me?
problem. Because of our own attachment, because that's what I'm suggesting. You see let's say your brother's depressed, but because of your attachment to having everything lovely, that's the same with the mums, because my mother's attachment, or everyone's attachment wants everything to be lovely. So when my mum saw my dramas, let's say, her attachment got upset in a sense. That was her problem. So we even over exaggerate the other person's problem because it's not suiting what you want. Yes, absolutely right. So when we can give up attachment, be more objective, and see the person for who they are, we can be more reasonable in helping and not sort of jump in, which is what guilt does. We're communicating. You're absolutely right. In other words, we look at the world and say it's so suffering. You look at the suffering of animals, for example. It's overwhelming when you start to read about it. Oh, this is a really powerful point. We think I'm suffering because of my compassion. You have incredible compassion for all these suffering animals, or the environment, or the poor, or the Ukrainians, whatever the group is at the moment, whom we see are suffering. We think we have all this compassion for them, and that's why we suffer. But compassion, and this is the Buddhist view very precisely, compassion and love are virtuous states of mind, and they can't possibly cause me suffering. It's attachment to wanting it to be different that causes me suffering. That's the point. So we don't suffer because people out there are suffering. We have compassion because they're suffering. But we have because of our attachment to wanting everything to be lovely, that's why we suffer, when our attachment sees ugly things. It's a really precise point. It's very powerful. You understand? It's a really tricky one. Yes, online, absolutely. Kara. Thank
Hi,
you.
Venerable. Kara here
Hello.
in Brooklyn. Hello. So
Yes.
I hope I can articulate this the way it's framed in my head. So if, the view is in the Buddha's view was the natural state, the purest state of the mind is bliss. So given that, why would we have things like anger and attachment that are so harmful? Is it like, why would the ego turn on itself?
What Buddha's saying is our potential is to have the mind clear, free of delusions, full of joy. That's our potential. That potential has never been anything different. That potential can never be driven away. That potential can never go. So it's not as if our minds are blissful. To say that bliss is a natural state of an undiluted mind is true, but it's not that we haven't accessed it because the delusions are polluting it. So the real point is it's our potential, and that should encourage us to want to access that potential. That's the point. And that's it. This is where we often hear, this is another way of putting it, like you're suggesting, the mind is naturally clear and pure. They would say that. So what we tend to hear from that, and this is interestingly the Christian teaching, I remember discussing this with my Jesuit priest friend, that we were all, at some point, we were clear. We were like a manifestation of God. And then he gave us free will, and then we got dirty again. But the Buddha's view is that's impossible. The Buddha's view is if you've been fundamentally pure in the start with no delusions, you can never be deluded. You'd be enlightened already. So the Buddha's view is we've always got the potential to be clear and pure. We've got the potential to be the Buddha, and that's what encourages us. So we've got to remove the pollution to discover our true nature. You with me? That's the point. Yeah. Yes, someone else. Someone else. Yes. Yes, good.
I'm a little confused about the point of how we have compassion.
A little bit closer to the mic or better, I'll just a bit so I can hear you. Go on.
Yes, we
Go on.
cannot hear him.
No, can't hear. Go on.
Is this any better?
Better, much better. Yeah.
So I'm a little confused about the proposition where we experience compassion.
So I want.
I'm a little confused about the scenario in which we perceive the suffering of others. We experience compassion.
I think you're monitoring. You've got to be safe. Or we have another mic, or that mic has to stay close to the mouth. Otherwise, I just can't hear.
Hello.
Much better. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Thank
Being
you.
on the first date.
I know exactly. Okay, go.
So for the third time, hopefully the last time, I'm confused about this scenario in which we perceive the suffering.
Perceive the suffering of others. Yeah.
Perceive the suffering of others.
Yes.
We internally have the experience of compassion
Yep.
as an appropriate
Response. Absolutely.
to the suffering of others.
Yes.
And yet, and then we are moved to act in some way that we regard as beneficial.
Yes. Exactly. That's right. That's the plan.
But we do not have the attachment, okay, to the impulse to intervene.
The what?
The impulse that we have to intervene.
Okay. Attachment would be no attachment. If we don't have it, if a normal person has compassion, that is to say, you're not a bodhisattva yet. Let's say the compassion we have is very real compassion. Oh my God, look at that suffering. This is unbearable. And then we go to the next level, great compassion. What can I do to help? That's amazing. But the degree of it is dependent upon how much attachment we have. And attachment is the primordial wish that I only ever see nice things. Attachment is a junkie that only wants everything to be lovely. Nice smell, nice taste, nice sound. Attachment is like a child in us that can't stand problems. Well, that suffering is unbearable out there. So my attachment is having a panic attack and freaking out. That's why I suffer when I see suffering, not because of compassion. They're separate states of mind, but it's hard to see that.
Okay, so that comes to the nub of the issue, which is what is the motive? If there is no somehow magically, spiritually, there is no attachment to the perceived.
Not magically spiritually. You work on your damn mind and the wisdom wing, giving up killing, stealing, lying, give up the servants of the delusions. Then you give up attachment gradually, and step by baby step.
But why do I act?
To help others.
Why do I care to help others?
Because of incredible, unbelievable compassion. This is the point of the bodhisattva.
Well, then that is detachment by another name.
Of course it's not.
How is it not?
Because it's called compassion. Attachment is a neurotic, eye-based, fear-based, obsessive, revolting state of mind that is totally, please finish, Jack, totally eye-based, totally self-centered, like a vampire. And compassion is connected to others. It's got nothing to do with I. It's empathetic, it's powerful, it feels and sees the suffering of others and only wants to help. It's completely amazing, like utterly different state of mind.
All right. So if that's the case,
Yes.
then if mundane compassion, worldly compassion is in fact selfish attachment.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you
In,
did.
no, in your mind, if you're an ordinary person, in your mind there is compassion, but there is still attachment. So then the attachment drags down that compassion. We have two kinds of states of mind: deluded, neurotic, I-based, fear-based ones that are the cause of all our suffering and cause us to harm others. And we have virtuous, positive, appropriate, empathetic, reasonable, valid states of mind called love, compassion, kindness, generosity, forgiveness. We're trying to grow those to a limitless degree. Nothing to do with ego. Right now, your attachment drags down your compassion. When you get rid of attachment, you are free to have this astonishing levels and amazing empathy, and you will on the bodhisattva path, and you'll never give up for eons working for others, driven by solely by interconnectedness, because you also realize emptiness by now, and only the wish to benefit others when you're a Buddha. That's it. Driven by compassion, unbearable compassion, as Lama's ever said.
Well, I know I have to give up the mind, but
What?
I say I know I have to give up the mind. I don't want to monopolize.
No, this is a good discussion. Come on.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think as a matter of personal experience. Okay, when I saw somebody stretched out on the sidewalk and wanted to give them $1, maybe they could get something to eat. I'm trying to recall a moment when I had that impulse and I was not attached or empathetic.
No, you can't just say that. It's not possible to have a moment of not attachment when you're driven by attachment. We're going to have attachment until we realize emptiness. It's going to be there at some level or other. We can work on it and make it less overt, less overt. I can work on it and not intervene, at least with my mouth, and control my attachment. But to be rid of it, honey child, you're really advanced. Come on, it's step by step. You can work on it. We can practice it every day, of course. But
So this attachment-free version of
Yes.
great compassion
yes,
is only the property of a realized being.
of course it is. Yes.
So I've never had such a moment.
No, of course you haven't.
Oh, well, that one.
One step at a time, babe.
Now I feel much better.
That's right. It's sort of like, we're in grade 1 music, we're in grade 2, and eventually you become Bach. Then it's natural.
I knew I didn't know what you were talking about. I just didn't know why I didn't know.
Now you know. Attachment is the way Buddha described it is so primordially deep. All we can do is start at the gross level. That is to say, and that means to control the servants of it. The body and speech. Yeah, so it's one step at a time, and it's constant practice. And even first intellectually, when we study the mind, you have to distinguish even intellectually the difference between a delusion and a virtue. They are so primordially different. But our trouble in our psychology, we give them equal status as normal parts of a normal person, and we don't distinguish, like a big soup in there. So this is quite a sophisticated point. There's no other psychology that says there are deluded states of mind that in their nature are poison and deluded and are neurotic. And there are states of mind that are utterly virtuous, that are beyond delusion. There's no view like that. So it's quite hard to hear this. And then to slowly recognize. Now we understand. Good. Thank you. Perseverance. Great. Yes. Who's talking here? Yes.
So maybe I'll share a little bit too much information that not everybody needs to know.
Well, why don't you just ask a question instead?
Yeah.
Stay close to the mic.
So
Stay close to the mic and ask a question.
I was a very angry person for most of my life. I was very self-centered. So then about 10 years ago, I discovered Pandit Center and discovered Buddhism, and I'm listening for the last 10 years and reading and practicing a little bit. And so I managed to not be extremely acutely angry.
Oh, good, wonderful.
At all.
Good, well done.
And I think I managed not to be so self-centered.
Good, wonderful. Is there a question
It's
coming?
not, yes. Actually,
What's the question?
It doesn't feel wonderful for me.
Okay, no, that's because, okay, why? So why do you feel it's not to feel wonderful?
Because basically the way it feels now, whatever I wish for me from others, from the environment, I recognize, that's attachment, you should not have it. Work on it. So I reached a stage where actually I can't really enjoy nothing because everything seems something that
I
I
understand.
should get rid
I understand
That's the
that.
question.
So,
Where
okay,
am
I understand, darling. I think it's really, it's like one of the diseases of attachment is it's never satisfied.
Right.
So it's a bit like you got to grade 1, you go, wow, great, I'm in grade 1. And then you go, oh, I'm only in grade 1. Well, I better get to grade 2. Maybe I'll get satisfied then. Then you get to grade 2, oh, I'm only in grade 2. You're not still satisfied. So so the neurotic attachment keeps thinking, well, if I go to the next one, I'll get satisfied. And then you get to grade 997, which is what you're up to. Oh, I'm still dissatisfied. So it's never ending. You go crazy. So it's a question of understanding the fundamental drive of attachment is to never be satisfied. But you have to practice from the virtuous perspective of delighting and learning to be satisfied with your progress. So delight you're in grade 1 and look eagerly to the next steps. So you have to practice the virtuous thoughts of rejoicing in your practice and rejoicing about where you are at. But that's got to be a conscious one because we never do that. And if we just keep following this other one, you'll go crazy. Do you understand? So you've got to rejoice. You've got to be happy. So you've got to consciously say positive thoughts. I'm doing a really good job. I'm really working on my mind. I'm really practicing hard. And we never do that. This is the irony of ego. We love to criticize ourselves.
And also everybody around me in my family criticizes me.
Say that again, what?
Everybody else in my family criticizes me, which doesn't happen.
There you go. This is the problem as well. I know this is really tricky. So you don't believe what they're saying. Just agree with them and laugh. Meanwhile, you've got to rejoice in your practice. You must. If we don't do that, we'll go mad. I swear, because attachment's so primordial, it'll never be satisfied automatically. This is the key to success. I promise you.
And so how do I rejoice?
You say the words.
I fake it till I make it.
Everything's fake it till you make it. Right. But you've got to be sincere. I am doing a good job. I did well. We never do this. This is the tragedy for us. All of us are the same. We can happily state our bad qualities, but it's almost embarrassing to say good things. But if we don't, we're sort of like paralyzed. But don't lie to yourself. If you're not doing a good job, don't say you are. Do you understand? If you're really not trying to practice, then don't pretend you are. But we've got to be more humble with ourselves and more reasonable. And that buoys us up. It's important. It's really important, darling. I can't stress it enough. Okay. Good, darling.
I think.
Yeah. Good. Who else? People? Question? Yes, Graciela. Talk to me, sweetheart.
I have an insight.
A what?
An insight.
An insight. I prefer questions than insights. We love to give our insights in the West. Tibetans would never do it. They'd be embarrassed to give an insight. Anyway, give your insight and then have a question about it. It's good. Come on.
It's huge.
Oh, it's huge. Well, it was a huge insight. You shouldn't talk about it. It's private. You don't tell your spiritual experiences to other people. You keep them private. But if you'd like to share it with us, you think it's a learning for us all. So you think we can learn from it. What's the point to talk? Is it a point to benefit you?
You can correct my.
Okay, well, make it a question.
Okay.
Then it's helpful.
Am I on the right path?
Good.
When I realize that for years I've been suffering for my son, to try to help him,
Yep.
to try to give him the right answer.
That's right.
And all of a sudden now I have this idea that I haven't been loving him. That what it is been my attachment
There you go.
to
Precisely.
avoid suffering.
Precisely.
And my attachment to
Yeah.
My attachment
And
to
your
avoid
attachment to
suffering.
believe as an object of attachment, a son, especially and a daughter, like we believe it's our job to mold them into the shape they should become. No. So you're absolutely right. Well done. Back off and leave him alone and love him for who he is. That's the answer. It's profound. It's the hardest one, especially for everybody, but especially for close relationships. Automatic. It's so automatic. When we start, and that's coming from the possessiveness. You see, attachment is emotional hunger, neediness, expectation, manipulation, controlling, and possessive. They're all a function of attachment. So when it's your child or your dog or your sister, we assume it's our job to fix them. And that's because of our own neurotic attachment, wanting them to be the way that we think they should be. It's very wicked. So you are on the right track. Well done, Graciela. All right. Yes.
No, I don't have a question.
What are you going to say then?
Nothing.
Oh, God, it's holding the mic. Oh, okay, good. Okay, so yes, please. This man has a question. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so in regards to anger, if we don't take care of the anger that we have through all the facts that happen in our surroundings, could that create some sort of like bad illness, for example?
I think you need to
cancer
say it in a
the
different
future?
way. Can you say it in a different way, please? I don't quite understand your point.
Okay, so the excess of anger that one carries inside.
You mean the finding fault? Anger is this should be better, that's wrong, how dare he, how dare she? That's anger. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Finding fault.
So could that on the long term cause one to have cancer or any other sort of illness?
No, it's a very good point. That's back to this Vajrayana model of how we are constructed. It's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question. Okay. If we take this view about how we're constructed, this subtler level of physical energy, we've got this subtle nervous system, and we have the wind energies, or prana they talk, coursing through all those channels. And it just happens to be that all our different states of mind are connected to their own different wind energies. So your Chinese doctor, but your Tibetan doctor especially, because that's the model they describe, she'll feel your wind energies, and she'll feel an imbalance, and she will know it's related to your anger. She will know that. Or she'll know it's related to your attachment. That's why you're having anxiety. So they'll give you herbal medicine to calm the winds down, and then that calms the states of mind that are connected to those winds. So, as Lama Zopa says, this is how karma works. As Lama Zopa says, you know, in your mind, you just got angry thoughts. Not even angry words yet, just angry thoughts. How this and dare this, and you're criticizing yourself or anybody else. That's anger building up as a habit. So one result is you programming your mind in the habit. Hardly surprising you keep being angry and you get born with anger next life. Do you understand? But secondly, because it's connected to those wind energies, which is your subtle body, it pollutes them, and literally that will eventually ripen as illness. Yes, literally. Yes, literally. Not this life, maybe. But next life, you might wake up in a body where you'll get cancer, you'll get diseases. So literally that the subtle winds have been polluted by the negative states of mind. That literally is what creates the cause for future suffering, physical suffering. And then even longer term, that impacts upon the external elements, which it creates the imbalance of the external elements as well. That's how come we create the entire universe. We're talking about over eons of time. Immediately, it might not. Or put it another way, you being angry every day now can activate some other karmic seeds you've got to get sick more quickly than if you hadn't been angry. It mightn't be the direct result of the anger, but it could be triggered by the anger. Yes, definitely. And equally, you can heal your sickness by changing your mind as well. Definitely. And now by saying mantra, for example, mantra, these Sanskrit sounds that are said to be very blessed, very powerful, they're all kind of representations of different qualities of the different Buddhas. Mantra is sound, and sound is wind. Do you understand? Sound is wind. So when you purifying your speech, by one, not saying negative words, and by two, saying positive words, and particularly by saying mantra, you can purify your winds, which means you can purify your illnesses. You can purify your diseases. Yes, either way, definitely. But it's long-term especially. Do you understand? Okay. It's a very interesting concept, isn't it? You know. So it mightn't be immediate. It's very common. Sometimes we think that, oh, she's angry all the time. But you can see that sometimes. It depends on the person, but you can see some people who are really angry or really depressed. Their body doesn't heal properly. Their whole body shows that they're breaking down. Looking about 100 years old, everything's broken, their joints are suffering. Of course it's their mind. And the wind's being polluted. Of course it is. Of course it is. Yes, definitely. But it doesn't always follow, because some people have a very strong virtuous karma of non-killing from past lives that they mightn't get the result immediately, but definitely next lives, definitely. So it's really powerful, so interconnected. The body and mind are utterly interconnected. It's very interesting. I know it's not 1 o'clock yet, but 90 minutes of mine, 90 minutes don't need 2 hours. I think we'll have a break soon. All right? Have a lunch break at 12, so it's sort of now, or a bit longer. Any more questions online here? We have a lunch break. Anything from Don? Nothing from Don? Nothing from Peg? Nothing from Shari? Nothing from Esther? Nothing from who else? Cara? Any more from you? Any more from Lou? John? Gina? Okay, we'll have a break, I think. Let's have a break, people. And we can have a lunch break now. What's the schedule? An hour.
Yes, 1 hour.
Kind of be relaxed, maybe 1:30, come back. And if you're going to have lunch together, I want one recommendation. If you'd like, you're not forced to, talk about this. If you're going to speak, your mouth's going to speak words, talk about this stuff. Don't just talk about the politics or the weather or, you understand? Make it useful talking. Yeah? If you like, otherwise be quiet. 2 options. Speak about it or be quiet. Good practice, okay? They're your options. Thank you, darlings. I'll see you in an hour or so. Thank you, dearest people on Zoom. See you in an hour and 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, darlings. Bye.
To you.
Yes.
I know.
Talk to me.
I'm gonna stop the recording.